Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel, Manhwa Explained to You. Today, we're diving into an amazing series called Heavenly Martial God, which is a very popular reincarnated manhwa. The city lay in ruins, the battlefield strewn with lifeless bodies. Amid the carnage stood a lone figure, a man wielding a sword with such ease and deadly precision that it seemed as though he was barely exerting himself. His conviction was palpable, every movement calculated and purposeful. This man was no ordinary warrior, he was the protagonist of this grim tale. As he surveyed the aftermath, a hint of puzzlement crossed his face. Strange, he murmured to himself, his voice barely above a whisper. Why do you still urge such violent intent when the demonic forces have already been vanquished? The heat of battle still burns on my back. Isn't that right, Spear King? Fist King? The two figures, known as the Spear King and Fist King, stepped forward and bowed deeply. We appreciate your efforts, one of them said solemnly. Supreme One, your contributions in defeating the demonic forces will never be forgotten, the other added. The protagonist turned slowly, his eyes narrowing as he fixed them with a piercing gaze. Enough with the empty flattery, he snapped, his voice laced with disdain. The two kings recoiled in surprise, but before they could react, the protagonist continued, his tone sharp and cutting. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? You bastards from the Orthodox sect are plotting to stab me in the back the moment I finish off the demonic threat. The Spear King and Fist King exchanged nervous glances, their hands instinctively reaching for their weapons. We have no personal quarrel with you, one of them stammered. But this must be done. They took their battle stances, ready to strike. The protagonist, however, remained unfazed, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Why are you hesitating? You who never knew how to fight as one. As if spurred by his taunts, the Spear King lunged forward, his spear aimed with deadly precision. But before the attack could land, the protagonist caught the spear between three fingers, stopping it effortlessly. The Spear King's eyes widened in disbelief. Let go of my weapon, he demanded, struggling in vain to free it. From behind, the Fist King charged, his powerful technique, the Nine-Tiger Fist, sending a barrage of blows hurtling toward the protagonist. But even as the attacks rained down, the protagonist remained unflinching. You're both so goddamn noisy, he muttered, his tone one of irritation. Shut your mouth, the Fist King roared, swinging with all his might. The force of the attack was immense, causing the ground to tremble, but the protagonist merely leaped back with a smirk. That one was almost impressive, protagonist remarked, his voice calm and mocking. Both kings, despite their exhaustion, charged at the protagonist with renewed conviction. Their attacks were fierce, but the protagonist dodged each one effortlessly, his movements fluid and graceful. Is this the best you can do? He taunted, a smirk playing on his lips. Show me the true power of the so-called 10 great martial artists. Infuriated by his mocking tone, both kings shouted, Shut up! They leaped into the air, aiming to overwhelm him with a combined attack. The sky above erupted in a massive explosion, the ground trembling from the sheer force of their clash. As the dust settled, the kings landed heavily on the ground, panting and drenched in sweat. They were spent, their bodies unable to endure anymore. The protagonist, on the other hand, descended calmly and scathed. He looked down at them with a taunting smile. Are you exhausted already? How can humans be this weak? You haven't even made me draw my sword. The Fist King, desperation etched on his face, whispered to his comrade, this might be our only chance. He's dropped his guard. In a final act of defiance, the Spear King lunged at the protagonist, his weapon aimed at his heart. But as the attack landed, it only grazed the protagonist's pinky finger. His eyes narrowed in fury. You dare wound me? He roared, his voice echoing like thunder. How dare you inflict even a scratch on the Supreme One's body? With a swift motion, the protagonist unsheathed his sword. The blade flashed, and in an instant, a red line appeared across the faces of both kings. Their eyes widened in shock as their heads fell to the ground, their bodies crumpling soon after. They claimed to be among the 10 great martial masters, the protagonist mused, a hint of boredom in his voice. Yet they were felled in the first exchange. Pathetic. 10 years passed. The once young protagonist had grown older, his hair now a stark white. He sat beneath a waterfall, meditating, the relentless rush of water crashing down upon him. His mind wandered back to the beginning, to the time when he had first taken up the sword, not out of ambition, but out of sheer necessity to survive. I scavenged for food, fought like a beast, wandered through desolate lands, and faced countless life-threatening challenges, he reflected, his thoughts heavy. Each victory made me stronger, until I became an unstoppable force. I walked alone, reigned alone, but in the end, I found only emptiness. After escaping the madness and futility that consumed me, I ended up here, searching for answers. A brilliant white aura began to emanate from his body, his hair spiking as his power surged. I've achieved everything there is in the human realm, he thought. To reach the pinnacle of martial arts, I must ascend beyond humanity. I must become a saint. With that, his spirit broke free from his mortal body, soaring skyward. I've done it, he shouted, the culmination of 10 years of suffering finally within his grasp. I've succeeded. I will ascend. As he ascended, moving swiftly through the clouds, a voice suddenly boomed, "Stop." The protagonist halted, shocked. Above him, the faces of gods gazed down, their expression stern. They surrounded him, their divine presence suffocating. Yet the protagonist, undeterred, smiled confidently. "Expected of saints," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "What a noisy entrance. Nice to meet you. I am your new—" "Enough," one god interrupted, his voice cold. "I can smell the stench of blood from here." Another god added, "That's right. You've committed too many evil deeds. We cannot accept a blood-soaked bastard like you." In unison, the gods declared, "Disqualified." The protagonist's eyes widened in disbelief. "Disqualified? What the hell are you talking about? You are not permitted to ascend," one of the gods stated firmly. "However, we will give you a chance to atone for your past wrongs." The protagonist's expression twisted with rage. "Atonement? After everything I've endured to get here? Stop spouting bullshit and give me my seat." The gods exchanged weary glances. "Our words don't reach him," one sighed. "There's only one way to deal with this." In an instant, the gods unleashed their power, a torrent of divine energy crashing into the protagonist. He screamed in agony, his spirit forced backward, plummeting towards the earth. As a thick cloud of aura engulfed him, the gods sighed in relief. "It's finally quiet," one murmured. But their relief was short-lived. The protagonist's voice rang out once more, defiant and unyielding. "I won't give up. You persistent bastard," the gods cursed, releasing another wave of energy, this time in the form of fire. The flames engulfed the protagonist, smoke billowing around him as he was reduced to a small stone. But even then, he was not defeated. The stone shattered, and the protagonist emerged, fist clenched, roaring, "No one can stop my ascension." The gods watched in disbelief. "What is he?" one muttered. From among them, a god in the form of a child stepped forward. "I will handle this," the child said calmly. The protagonist eyed the child warily. "This is the saint?" he scoffed. The child god merely spat, and a torrent of water cascaded down, engulfing the protagonist's spirit. As he struggled, the god blew a cold wind, pushing the protagonist further down, away from the heavens. "You dare make me fall?" the protagonist screamed as he was forced back to the mortal realm. "You've messed with the wrong person. Just you wait, I'll destroy you all. I will definitely return." And with that, his spirit plummeted, crashing back into the earth, his vow echoing in the heavens above. The protagonist's body plunged into the water, his consciousness fading as the shock of his fall overwhelmed him. As he began to stir, thoughts rushed through his mind, the Supreme One. "I passed out from the shock? Damn it. Get up. I need to regain my strength if I'm going to beat those gods." His eyes slowly opened to the sight of a beautiful woman leaning over him, her voice filled with concern. "My lord. My lord," she called, her face a picture of worry. "Are you all right? I was so afraid something terrible had happened to you." "Who is this woman?" The protagonist thought, his mind reeling. "Where am I? And why is she holding my hand? Why are my hands so soft and pale?" He reached up and touched her face, and she responded gently, "If you're looking for something, my lord, please tell me." Her voice was soft, soothing, yet unfamiliar. The protagonist quickly moved to a nearby mirror, and what he saw there stunned him. The reflection staring back at him was not his own. The face was that of a young man, almost childlike, with features that would belong to a male courtesan rather than a hardened warrior. Who was this child? He thought, horrified. He pinched his cheek, the sharp pain confirming the reality of his situation. This is real. This is me. I'm this child now? The woman, sensing his distress, spoke up again. "My lord, you mustn't push yourself too hard." Who are you?" he demanded. Her face fell slightly, confusion and concern etched into her features. "You don't remember me? Did you hit your head when you collapsed? I am Alice, the overseer of the Nangum family's eldest son. Your caretaker." Nangum family? The name triggered a cascade of memories. "Then this is the house of the Nangum family?" he asked, his voice trembling with disbelief. "Of course, my lord," Alice replied, her tone softening with concern. "Don't you remember anything?" The protagonist's mind raced, struggling to piece together the fragments of his past and present. "Who am I? Then, who am I?" he asked, his voice growing weaker. Alice's eyes widened, and she tried to stifle a giggle. "My lord, please, stop joking around. You are the second son of the Nangum family, Nangum Henry." Her expression became serious as she saw his distress. "Are you feeling unwell, my lord?" The protagonist's mind whirled with confusion and disbelief. This is a dream. It has to be. His knees buckled, and he collapsed to the floor. Alice rushed to his side, panic in her voice. "My lord! Are you all right? Please, you need to rest." As she helped him to his bed, she whispered, almost to herself, "It's been 70 years since the establishment of the Orthodox Heavenly Alliance. The protagonist lay on the bed, her words echoing in his mind. 70 years? I was already 80 when the Orthodox Heavenly Alliance was established. I was just over 90 when I tried to ascend Heavenly Mountain. But 60 years have passed since I failed and fell. Then, that means I'm over 150 years old now? He tried to make sense of it all. I failed to ascend and was reborn 60 years later, as the second son of the Nangam family? The absurdity of it all made him laugh, but the laughter quickly turned to rage. He clenched his fists, his voice trembling with fury. You damn gods! Blocking my ascension wasn't enough? Now you're toying with me? Why? Why make me wait 60 years before being reborn? His thoughts darkened. All the martial arts skills I accumulated over my entire life. Gone. What a waste. Anger surged through him, but he forced himself to stay calm. No! I can't despair over this. Even if my body is different, I still have my memories and experience. I'm someone who started from the bottom and reached the top. I'll do it even faster this time. A sinister smile crept across his face as he plotted his next move. If I'm the son of the Nangam family, I must at least have the basics down. He waited until nightfall, then decided to test his new body. Slipping out of bed, he began sneaking towards the exit. Thankfully, there's no one on guard. He thought, relieved. But as he approached the door, he saw 2 guards stationed outside. Damn it. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he considered his options. Should I just kill them? He stopped himself. No. It's too much to kill on my first day reborn. I'll just jump over the wall. He focused his energy, ready to use the light body technique. But as he leaped, he noticed a frog jumping faster than he was. Landing awkwardly on the ground, he cursed under his breath. Why isn't the light body technique working? Is it because I'm not used to this body yet? Determined, he tried again, gathering all his energy before jumping. But as he landed, he heard a loud crack. Pain shot through his leg as he realized, with horror, that he had broken his own bone. The pain was unbearable, and he screamed in agony. The guards rushed to his side, one of them exclaiming, "My lord! Your leg! It's broken again!" The protagonist gritted his teeth as they helped him up. It broke quite cleanly. It should heal quickly, the guard said, trying to reassure him. But you mustn't forget to take your medicine. Alice appeared at his side, her face a mask of concern. You heard the doctor, right? Don't do anything strenuous. No running or jumping from now on. The protagonist snapped back at her, frustration boiling over. Don't make such a big fuss. I'm not pottery. What kind of person breaks because of he cut himself off, realizing the irony of his words? Damn it. It's me. I'm the one who's fragile. The doctor entered, carrying a cup of bitter-smelling liquid. My lord, your body is very fragile. You must be careful. It seems you're lacking in vitality, so I brought you a decoction to drink along with your medicine. Alice's voice trembled with worry. Please don't overdo it. I'll die of guilt if anything happens to you. The protagonist's patience snapped. Get out. Both of you, he shouted, throwing a pillow at them in frustration. But as he did, a sharp pain shot through his shoulder. He had dislocated it. Alice sighed, backing away slowly. Okay, my lord. I'll leave. Just don't overdo it. The doctor, unfazed by the outburst, added, Please be careful, my lord. Your body is quite delicate. Delicate. The word echoed in the protagonist's mind as he sat down, trying to gather his thoughts. I need to find out why I'm this weak. He sat in a meditative position, focusing on the flow of energy within his body. Sweat poured down his face as he concentrated, trying to sense any disruptions. After a few moments, he grimaced. There are blockages in several places. 9 places in total. The body is too cold, the cold energy too strong. This must be the 9-yin blockage, a condition that prevents the flow of internal energy. He laughed bitterly. This guy. He has 9-yin blockage, a body as fragile as pottery, and an internal energy system so rotten that it's completely blocked. What kind of sick joke is this? His anger flared again, and he shouted at the heavens, You put me, the Supreme One, the man who devoured those with invulnerable bodies for breakfast, into a shitty body like this? Why? Why are you doing this to me? You're not gods. You're just thugs. His fury grew as he clenched his fists, his voice trembling with rage. Just wait. I'll make you pay for this. You gods made me this way? I'll definitely take my revenge. He swung his fist in frustration, but as he did, he felt a sharp pain. His wrist had snapped from the force of his own punch. He screamed in pain, clutching his broken wrist. Desperate, he called out, Is anyone there? Can you call the doctor? The doctor wraps the last bandage around the protagonist's arm, his expression stern. How many times must I tell you? You're as fragile as an egg. Your body will break even with the slightest physical exertion. The protagonist, clearly annoyed, snaps back, I get it, so stop your nagging and get out, Alice. The doctor sighs, his face full of concern. Then please, my lord, rest comfortably. He exits the room, but not without a worried glance back. As he leaves, the protagonist scowls, muttering to himself, "Damn it. I used to crush humans like ants, and now I can't even kill an ant." His eyes narrow with determination. But who am I? He clenches his fist so tightly that it trembles. I am the Supreme One, who knows no failure. Even in the face of impossible odds. He winces. Damn, I clenched too hard. Despite the pain, his resolve strengthens. There are two ways I can overcome this trial, he decides. The dark mind purification technique, which expels impure energy and replaces it with pure, firm energy, and the internal mind and body technique, which channels energy into every muscle and bone. If I use both, the 9 blockage won't stand a chance. A determined smile crosses his face. As the Supreme One, shall I begin? He closes his eyes, feeling the energy swirling within him, and soon, the palace begins to emit strong, fog-like waves. Meanwhile, Alice approaches the door, carrying his medicine and food. She hesitates, noticing the unusual quiet. My lord, it's time to take your medicine. Are you asleep? Why is it so quiet? She gently pushes the door open, only to be shocked by the sight of the protagonist deep in meditation, blood pouring from his head and rising upwards. Panicked, Alice rushes to his side, trying to stop the bleeding with her hands. But the blood merely shifts, now streaming from his shoulder. She frantically tries to cover both his head and shoulder, but the blood starts pouring from all over his body like a fountain. Her face pales with worry. My lord, she screams, but the protagonist remains deep in thought. Alice shakes him, her voice frantic. For God's sake, my lord! What in the world were you doing? You nearly died. The protagonist, now fully aware, thinks bitterly, I became disabled after just a little cultivation. What an absolutely pathetic body. Alice notices tears in his eyes and asks, are you crying? Wiping his eyes, he retorts, these are not tears. They are drops of manly sweat. He glances at the blood-stained floor. No, this is blood. Frustrating, miserable drops of blood. Ignoring his words, Alice forces a pill into his mouth. Stop saying weird things and eat this. He frowns, swallowing the pill. What is this? It's a heavenly golden pellet, Alice replies. A valuable pill said to increase internal energy by 10 years. The protagonist's eyes widen slightly. The heavenly golden pellet, said to increase internal energy by 10 years. He pauses, then adds with a hint of doubt, I don't know if it's 10 years or 100, but I know it's an expensive medicine. Suddenly, he feels a surge of energy within him, excitement flickering in his eyes. Is the medicine taking effect? Alice asks. But just as quickly, his excitement fades. It's entering, and then it's gone, he says, disappointment heavy in his voice. Alice mirrors his expression. I guess it's the same as before, she says, sadness in her tone. The protagonist mutters, to think that using the greatest internal energy cultivation technique and taking a miraculous drug would be so useless. It's like trying to fill a broken pot with water. His face contorts with frustration and anger. I'll fix this damn body if it's the last thing I do, no matter what. As Alice prepares to leave, she gently advises, please, take care of yourself. Wait, the protagonist calls after her. Where's the martial storage? You know, where they keep all the martial arts books. You mean the heavenly martial storage? Alice asks, confused. Yeah, something like that, he snaps, growing irritated. Just shut up and tell me where it is. Alice hesitates but eventually responds. Once she leaves, the protagonist begins to unwrap his bandages. My internal and external energy cultivation techniques are too powerful for this weak body. The only way forward is to learn new martial techniques. He opens the door, feeling a cold breeze brush against his skin. A new body requires new methods, he muses, a determined smile on his face. But the chill soon becomes unbearable, and he quickly retreats to his bed, wrapping himself in the sheets. The 9 blockage makes even this simple action exhausting. He starts to sweat and, in frustration, tears the blanket into shreds. Later that night, he layers himself in the shredded sheets and bandages, finally finding some comfort. It's more bearable now, he mutters to himself. Looking out at the massive building in the distance, he recalls the Sword King's words about the Nangam family martial storage. What's so amazing about a place that stores a bunch of paper, he had once scoffed. The Sword King's voice echoes in his mind, the heavenly martial storage contains 1,000 years worth of the family's martial knowledge. The protagonist grits his teeth. I get it, so shut up, he mutters, trying to push the memories aside. As night falls, he approaches the martial storage, where 2 guards stand watch. One of them spots him and asks, who's there? The protagonist steps into the light, but the guards don't recognize him. Enraged, he shouts, how dare you point your weapons at me? In a flash, he moves behind them, delivering sharp blows to their necks. But to his shock, the guards remain standing, unaffected. One of the guards quickly kneels, recognizing him. Are you the second lord of the Nangam family? Both guards immediately bow, pleading, please forgive our impudence. We didn't recognize you in the dark. The protagonist, still fuming, eventually relents. It's all right. These things happen. he strides past them into the palace, and one of the guards rushes to inform the family head. Inside, the protagonist is greeted by the sight of endless shelves filled with books. His eyes widen in disbelief. So many books, an entire library, he whispers, both awed and overwhelmed by the sheer volume of knowledge before him. The protagonist stands in awe, his eyes wide with disbelief as he takes in the sheer number of books stacked in the library. A smile slowly spreads across his face as he thinks, surely, out of all these books, there must be one that can help me. With newfound determination, he whispers, shall I start the treasure hunt? The entire night passes as he devours book after book, his hope slowly dwindling with each page. By morning, he is exhausted, slumped against a shelf, his eyes burning from the relentless reading. There's nothing useful here, he mutters bitterly. To think the Nangam family, hailed as the best among the 5 great families, amounts to this. His anger boils over as he realizes the futility of his search. Suddenly, his heart begins to pound heavily in his chest, a wave of panic washing over him. He clutches at his chest, his breathing labored. Damn this 9 blockage, he curses through gritted teeth, sweat pouring down his face. If I don't resolve this soon, I'll be seeing the Grim Reaper before I see any gods. Staggering out of the palace, he is startled by a stern voice. You dumb child. The shock causes him to stumble, and he looks up to see a towering figure standing above him. It's his father, the head of the Nangam family. The protagonist, disoriented, asks, may I ask who you are? But his father cuts him off, shouting again, you dumb child. With authority, his father continues, I restricted your access to the martial storage for a reason. So why in the world did you enter the heavenly martial storage? Before the situation escalates further, several guards rush to the protagonist's side. Family head, please calm down, one of them pleads. The second lord is still not well. The protagonist, confused, thinks to himself, family head, the boss of the Nangam family? That means, he's this kid's father. The family head turns to the soldiers, his anger barely contained. All of you, back off. I will deal with him not as the family head, but as his father. The soldiers obediently retreat, leaving the two alone. His father, now visibly struggling to control his emotions, approaches his son. The protagonist, though shaken, stands his ground. Suddenly, his father's demeanor changes, his voice filled with worry. Oh my child, he says, his face softening with concern. Why did you enter the martial storage? Your body is as cold as ice. Are you alright? Your face is so pale. Let's go warm you up. With a pained expression, the protagonist replies, I only need 2 things, a miraculous drug to increase my internal energy, and a secret technique that suits me. His father, still worried, responds, if it's a miraculous drug, do not worry. After the mass slaughter caused by the demons, the seeds have dried up, but I will find a way to obtain some. What about the secret technique? The protagonist asks, his voice tinged with desperation. I can't do that, his father says firmly. You have a body that cannot learn martial arts. If your cultivation is disrupted, it could result in your death. I'll die even if I don't, the protagonist retorts, his hands clasped together in a pleading gesture. I can't give up without even trying. You can't, his father insists, his tone final. Even if I allow everything else, I absolutely will not allow you to learn martial arts. The protagonist seethes with anger, thinking, he's so stubborn. I want to grab him by the collar and scream at him, but I'll hold it in. He quickly recalculates his approach. His father, trying to end the conversation, says, stop being stubborn and let's head inside. But before he can move, the protagonist suddenly starts vomiting, his face pale and drenched in sweat. His father's concern deepens. Get a hold of yourself, he urges, holding his son steady. Feigning dizziness, the protagonist murmurs, I don't know how much time I have left. Please, think of this as my dying wish. His father's resolve crumbles, and tears well up in his eyes. Oh, my beautiful child, he whispers, his heart breaking. The next day, the protagonist, dressed in fresh clothes, feels the warmth from his father's embrace still lingering. I'm feeling warmer after the day he embraced me, he reflects, his mind now focused on the task ahead. He walks toward a beautiful building, its architecture grand and imposing. I hope I'll find something useful this time, he mutters as he opens the door. Inside, the interior resembles the heavenly martial storage, but it is smaller, with only 1 floor. At least searching it will be easier, he thinks. He recalls his father's words about the King's Pavilion, the family's greatest secret storage, accessible only by the Nangam family head and his bloodline. I will permit entry, his father had said, but do not be overcome by your greed of wanting to learn martial arts. The protagonist dismisses his father's warnings and begins rifling through the books. Day turns into night as he pores over the texts, eventually falling asleep on a pile of books, only to wake up and continue reading. Finally, he closes the last book and begins counting the techniques that might be useful. The 5 that stood out were the Heavenly Thunder God Technique, King's Divine Technique, King's Raining Steps, and the Thunder God's Sword, he muses. But then his expression darkens. What a shame, it's not enough to create a martial art befitting this body with just these. I need an internal energy growth technique. As he stands, his stomach growls, reminding him of his physical limitations. I guess even a body that can't use immense strength still gets hungry, he mutters. As he walks toward the door, he slips on a book and falls to the ground. Embarrassed and frustrated, he thinks, this is so humiliating. As he gets up, he notices a loose floor tile. Curious, he tries to lift it, but it's stuck fast. Straining, he fears his arm might be ripped off, so he grabs a rod and pries it open. After much effort, he succeeds and begins coughing from the dust that rises. Underneath the tile, he discovers inscriptions written on the stone. A smile of excitement lights up his face. Has my time finally come? In the next scene, Alice is watching the protagonist with a mix of disappointment and worry as he devours his food. The duck has been cooked well, he comments, noticing her concerned expression. Why are you looking at me like that? Is this the first time you've seen someone eat? This is the first time I've seen you eat so well, Alice replies. Usually, you only eat a little and then ask me to clear the table. The protagonist laughs. It's because this kid was spoon-fed with a golden spoon. In my days, it was a struggle to even get scraps of spinach from the market floors. He then takes out the golden pill and swallows it in one gulp, preparing to cultivate now that his stomach is full. As the chapter opens, Alice is on her way to bring food to Henry when she notices someone standing at the front gate. It's Henry's elder brother, who is dropping off tonics again. Alice observes this and thinks to herself, the First Lord is so awkward. If he's so concerned, he should just go and check on Henry himself. Inside, we see Henry deep in cultivation, surrounded by a swirling energy. He focuses intensely, thinking, Dark King's mixed heavenly energy, the greatest martial art technique that made the Supreme One who he is. However, he quickly realizes that the technique is too demanding, and not suited for his body. It's too greedy and takes a big toll, he reflects. Determined, he decides to rebuild the internal energy framework using the techniques he found in the King's Pavilion as the foundation. If I fuse it with the Dark King's mixed heavenly energy, is it possible? He smiles confidently. It is. I know I can do it. After all, I am the Supreme One. At that moment, a vision of Henry's past self, or perhaps his true self, merges with his current body. As the protagonist navigates through Henry's blood clots, he lifts an invisible sword, as it chopping away at invisible barriers, purging the impure energy, and injecting pure energy into his body. Henry begins to glow with a tremendous burst of energy. Sweat drips from his face as he breaks through one of the 9 blocks that had been stifling him since childhood. Outside, Alice continues her duties, but as she approaches Henry's room, she notices a strange heat wave emanating from behind the door. Concerned, she pushes the door open just as a huge blast of energy bursts forth from the room, scattering the food she was carrying. Rushing inside, she finds Henry still in the midst of his cultivation, his body glowing and drenched in sweat. My lord! Alice screams, running to his side. Henry, barely holding on, mutters with a strained voice, I just barely broke through. Before collapsing in front of her. The family head, alerted by the commotion, arrives and demands to know why Henry has collapsed. Bowing low, Alice apologizes, I should have kept a better eye on him. The father, torn with worry, says, I must see Henry immediately. However, his elder son steps forward, stopping him. Father, we shouldn't go in just yet, he advises. Alice chimes in, the First Lord is right. The head doctor also mentioned that Henry needs time to stabilize. The family head, filled with guilt, sinks to the floor. Henry must have learned something in the King's Pavilion and messed it up, he mutters. It's all my fault. I should have discouraged him to the end. I'm so worried about Henry's health. He lowers his head, deep in thought. I only broke through one of the 9 flow blockages, Henry thinks to himself. I managed to avoid immediate death, but it's pointless if I don't have a suitable body as a vessel for the internal energy technique. What should I call this new technique? He smirks slightly. I guess the Heavenly Dark King technique works. Later, the family head, doctor, and Alice enter the room, shocked to find Henry doing push-ups. Is this the first time you've seen someone exercise? Henry asks with a smirk. The doctor, astonished, says to the family head, is it possible for my second son to be doing push-ups? It's nothing short of a miracle, the doctor responds, marveling at Henry's improvement as he continues his exercises. Henry finally stops, collapsing onto the floor. Damn, this body is acting up again, he mutters. The father and doctor exchange stunned glances. Am I dreaming? The family head exclaims. The doctor reassures him, that doesn't seem to be the case. He checks Henry's pulse and is impressed. What a surprise! Your vessel is sturdier than before, and your pulse has become much livelier. I told you I was fine, Henry says, with a hit of pride. I know my body best. Overcome with emotion, the family head hugs Henry tightly. I'm proud of you, my child, he says with a smile. I don't know what you did, but your father couldn't be happier to see you healthy. Both my shoulders. Henry winces, you're hugging me so hard. The father releases him, worried. The doctor warns, it's true that his condition, the 9 blockage disease, has improved, but he still has fragile aspartame. Henry, frustrated, asks, what are you going to do about this? His father pretends not to hear the question, quickly changing the subject. I just remembered I have urgent business to attend to. Get well soon. He hurries out the door, leaving Henry fuming. This is pretty much hit and run, Henry mutters angrily. If my body wasn't like this, I would. Before he can finish his thought, his father suddenly reappears in the doorway. What is it now? Henry asks, exasperated. With a genuine, encouraging smile, his father simply says, hang in there, my son, before rushing out the door again. Henry shouts after him, get my arms back to how they were so that I can. 1 month later, we see Henry running laps around the home with Alice trying to keep up. Oh my god, Henry pants, how many laps has it been? Alice, struggling to match his pace, mutters to herself, is this really the second Lord that I know? I can't believe my eyes either, she continues. After waking from his collapse about a month ago, he's become a completely different person. Maybe his soul merged with someone else's. Alice, realizing how absurd it sounds, chastises herself. Stop talking nonsense. She then glances at Henry and, shaking her head in disbelief, wonders, did he fall into the water or something? As the chapter unfolds, we see the soldier pointing towards a shallow pond. The pond isn't even that deep, he says. At most, it's probably around 30 centimeters. How could someone drown there? Alice, hearing this, reflects on her recent worries. Is that so? She murmurs. Her thoughts turn to the second Lord, Henry, who has been acting erratically and indulging himself far too often. Am I just being too edgy these days? She wonders. The next day, in the bustling town of Nangum, a child happily munches on a candy with her mother by her side. Suddenly, Henry walks past the child and, in the blink of an eye, snatches the candy from her hand. The child bursts into tears, but Henry, unfazed, begins eating the candy as he casually strolls through the town. His eyes scan the area, searching for a decent place to get some alcohol, but his attention is soon drawn to a commotion nearby. He turns to see a group of children ganging up on a smaller boy, mercilessly beating him. The victim spots Henry and, with desperation in his voice, pleads for help. Those bastards are being cowards, ganging up on me. Henry, coldly indifferent, replies, and? The weak falling prey to the strong is the way of the world. The boy is stunned by Henry's lack of compassion. You'd be better off learning to overcome this on your own, without relying on others, Henry continues. He then glances around, sighing in frustration. Damn, choosing a place to drink is hard when there are so many options. At that moment, a suspicious-looking man approaches him. I've noticed you've been looking around for something. What is it? The man asks. I'm looking for the best drinking spot in town, Henry replies, his tone disinterested. Follow me, the man says, leading Henry down a narrow alley and pointing to a door. Over here. Henry eyes the door skeptically. I guess it's one of those hidden gems, he muses. But as he steps inside, he's shocked to find himself surrounded by a group of rough-looking thugs. One of them, the leader, smirks and says, looks like you brought us a pushover. Henry, still licking his stolen candy, isn't the least bit bothered. So, this isn't a drinking place after all, he says nonchalantly. The man who led Henry their sneers, it would be best if you don't try to run away. Another thug, sizing up Henry's smooth face, jeers, you should just leave everything you have here and head back home. With an unwavering gaze, Henry responds, I won't do it. All my life, I've only taken from others. Never have I had someone take from me. Not even once. The thugs are amused by what they perceive as bravado coming from a young man who looks out of place in their world. The leader orders one of his men, teach him a lesson. Show him the reality of the world. The thug approaches Henry, taunting, you think I'm a pushover just because I'm talking nicely? He then swats the candy from Henry's hand and screams, how dare you act so arrogantly while I'm talking? As the thug rears back to punch him, Henry quickly slams his head against the wall, pinning him there. Bastard, Henry growls, I don't need you teaching me what I already know. The room falls silent as the leader and the man who lured Henry here stand in shock. Henry releases the thug, who crumples to the floor, clutching his broken wrist. What the hell, Henry mutters, examining his hand. It broke just because I put a little strength into hitting him. This troublesome body. Enraged, the leader grits his teeth and one of the other thugs draws a knife, charging at Henry. But Henry effortlessly grabs the thug's arm, redirecting the knife and punching him square in the face, sending him flying across the room. With a smile, Henry says, fortunately, my hands are fine this time around. The leader, still in disbelief, watches as Henry casually mocks, where did all your bravado from earlier go? Weren't you all just talking about the weak falling prey to the strong? The thugs, now agitated, rush at Henry all at once. With a confident smirk, Henry remarks, you should have tried this group action earlier. He quickly dispatches the nearest thug with a powerful punch, then proceeds to take down the others with a series of swift, brutal kicks. The leader, utterly shocked, watches as his men fall one by one. Turning to face the leader, Henry slams him to the ground with a single blow. The thug leader, sweating profusely, stammers, who the hell are you? Henry, unfazed, replies, just someone who knows the realities of the world better than you. The leader struggles to get up, trembling. He's a bloodthirsty demon. He whispers to himself. Mockingly, Henry calls out, what are you doing over there? You're the strongest here, right? So, let's see how you do. Grinding his teeth in fear and anger, the leader musters the last of his courage and charges at Henry, but just as he reaches him, he drops to his knees, screaming, I'm sorry. I'm still figuring out the situation. I need to survive in the back alleys, so I need to have a high level of street smarts. Henry, unimpressed, remarks, thugs in the past actually had some guts. Is it no longer like that anymore? The leader desperately tries to convince Henry, I do have guts. I swear. Henry turns his back, dismissing him. That's so unconvincing. As Henry begins to walk away, the leader, seething with humiliation, reaches for a hidden sword behind his back, muttering, please trust me, you fucking bastard. He attempts a sneak attack, but Henry, noticing it, quickly turns to face him. The leader's sneak attack misses, and his sword clatters against the ground. In that instant, Henry leaps into the air, his fist clenched and ready. As he descends, he locks eyes with the leader and, with a stony expression, declares, all right, I'll trust you. He then unleashes a powerful punch that sends the leader sprawling. In the next scene, we see Henry's brother, alerted by Alice, who says, from what I've heard from the attendants, the second lord is heading toward the main street. I hope nothing happens to him. Concerned, Henry's brother prepares to leave, ready to intervene if necessary. Meanwhile, Henry is already inside a shady establishment, drinking alcohol being poured by the very thugs he had just beaten. This is great, Henry says, savoring his drink. He asks for another, but the leader, visibly nervous, informs him, that's the last cup we have. Unhappy with the response, Henry snaps, what? I just got started. Why isn't there more? The leader hesitantly points to the empty bottles. That's your 9th bottle already, Lord Henry. Henry's irritation grows, but the leader politely tries to pacify him, of course, we weren't implying anything. We just used up all our money on you. We thought it might be best if you stopped drinking, too much alcohol isn't good for your health. With a dark look, Henry responds, are you telling me to stop? He suddenly kicks the leader, sending him flying across the room. How dare someone like you order me around? Maybe I should grind you all into paste and use it to brew more alcohol. The thugs, terrified, listen as Henry continues, be thankful no one here put a knife to my throat. In the past, I would have shoved it right back into their neck and twisted it like a skewer. His words chill the room, leaving the thugs trembling. Damn it, Henry mutters, I feel sober after talking so much. He lies down, saying, I'll take a short break before I drink more. The thugs, now desperate, whisper among themselves. What should we do? One asks. We need to run while we can, another suggests. The leader, however, cautions them, don't do anything rash. For all we know, he might be testing us. Stay put until I confirm he's really asleep. He cautiously approaches Henry, who appears to be knocked out, but just as he turns around, he's startled by the appearance of Nangum family soldiers. One soldier, with a serious expression, demands, how dare you touch the second lord of the Nangum family? Do you have a death wish? At that moment, Henry's brother enters the room, his face stern. Who are you? He asks. The thugs instantly recognize him as the Sword Dragon. My goodness, the leader thinks in horror, the crazy bastard is the second lord of the family. Realizing they had been dealing with Henry all along, the thugs are paralyzed with fear. In his sleep, Henry begins to murmur, damn gods. How dare you do this to me? You should have just killed me instead. Just wait, I'll definitely take my revenge. The leader, trying to keep his composure, nervously says to Henry's brother, oh my, why would the Lord speak of things like this in his sleep? People might think we were trying to harm him or something. I can explain all of this. Henry's brother, anger simmering, orders, take your hands off him now. As the leader hesitantly reaches out to comply, Henry suddenly grabs his hand, his eyes snapping open. Where do you think you're going? Give me one more cup, he demands. The leader, now terrified, is dragged outside by Henry's brother, who scolds him, I only wanted you to take your hands off him. You're so weak you can't even handle that. Henry, still drunk and now sitting on the back of a soldier, groggily asks, who is he? Alice whispers, it's your older brother. Older brother? Henry slurs, I didn't know I had an older brother. Alice, now visibly frustrated, snaps, if you're drunk, just shut up and sleep quietly. We're going back to the palace. Henry's brother, barely containing his anger, orders the soldiers to beat the thugs for daring to touch his younger brother. The thugs cry out in protest, this is so unfair. But their pleas fall on deaf ears as they are severely punished. As they leave, a soldier carries unconscious Henry on his back, with Alice walking beside them. Henry, still drunk, looks back and mumbles, what was that? Alice, smiling politely, replies, the First Lord is punishing them for touching the Second Lord of the Nandum family. They'll pay a huge price for that. The First Lord is usually very calm, but when it comes to you, he's far more protective. Henry, in a drunken stupor, says, that's not it though. I was the one who beat them up. I beat them up repeatedly. It must have really hurt. The next day, we shift to a different scene. A young man is practicing with a sword, slicing through wooden statues placed randomly around him. His movements are precise and swift, cutting down the statues in mere seconds. A voice from behind him says, how impressive. The young man turns to see his father, and with a respectful bow, he addresses him, Father. His father, observing the aftermath of the practice, says, it looks like you've reached the 10 stars of the solitary spirit sword. Live up to your name, Sword Tiger. Right now, people only know of the first son, Ron, but soon, everyone will see your true potential. The young man bows again, I will do my best to live up to your expectations. His father, with a satisfied smile, says, "It looks like you'll be able to catch up to the sword dragon sooner than expected." The sword tiger defeating the sword dragon. It seems the tiger is about to devour the dragon. In that case, I'll just need to devour the heavens above the dragon. With conviction, he crushes a wooden cup in his hand. In the next chapter, Henry is seen sipping soup and remarks, "This soup is really good." He notices Alice's tense expression and asks, "Why are you making that face?" Alice, clearly frustrated, retorts, "What's wrong with my face?" Henry, sensing her agitation, continues, "It looks like you've got a lot on your mind. If you have something to say, just go on." Alice suddenly bursts out in anger, shouting, "Why are you doing this? It's only been a short time since you broke your bones, and you're already going out and getting wasted. You should think about your health." She continues, "You can't go around doing stuff like that just because you recovered a little, my lord. Do you know how many people were worried about you? Please, be more careful." Henry, dismissive of her concerns, asks, "I don't see any elixirs here today. I've been seeing less of them recently." Alice's anger flares even more. "Do you think elixirs are as common as dogs?" she yells. Henry, unfazed, replies, "Of course, I know that elixirs are a little expensive." Alice shoots back, "It's not just a little expensive. Do you know how many chunks of gold are required to make one elixir? Not only is it hard to find, but it's also really expensive." Henry thinks to himself, "The price has gone up a lot since her time. But we are a renowned family, is it really that hard for us to get something like this? That's ridiculous." Frustrated, Alice says, "There's no use talking to you." Meanwhile, one of the Nangum elders receives a report from a spy lurking behind the trees. The spy hands him a letter from the province, stating, "There's nothing of note, but there was a question regarding the current situation. They said they can send people for support if necessary." The elder, his expression darkening, mutters, "Support? Do they still not trust me after I've been waiting and preparing for 10 years? He then orders the spy, "I'll take care of this. Tell them not to get involved in any movements on the family head's side." The spy replies, "There isn't anything worth mentioning." The elder asks, "How about the current situation?" The spy reports, "A while back, they spent a huge sum of money to buy elixirs and are now very low on funds. If this continues, it wouldn't be surprising if they go bankrupt." The elder, with an evil grin, says, "Yeah, that's right. They're trying to cure someone who's been poisoned for more than 10 years. Henry is known as the weakest in the entire history of the Nangum family. Besides having a body as frail as pottery, he also has the rare disease of 9-flow blockage. He's useless compared to a normal person, not to mention a martial artist. To think that they'd used all of their assets to buy expensive elixirs to save that boy, what a waste of money. But because of that, the number of people supporting me is increasing. So I guess I should thank them." The spy then adds, "But recently, the second lord has been making strange movements. As I reported earlier, besides exercising, he went out yesterday and had to be carried back because he got totally drunk." The elder dismisses it, "There's no need to pay attention to Henry. Continue keeping tabs on the family head and what's happening around him." The spy nods, "Understood." In the next scene, Henry is doing rigorous workouts, pulling himself up repeatedly. He remarks, "Fortunately, I didn't dislocate my shoulders and arms today. Has my body gotten used to this?" He continues, "Let's see. I need a lot of elixirs that are way more effective than the normal ones in order to break through the blockage. But it would be a problem if the Nangum family can't support the purchase of these. I thought I would be able to sit down and eat those pills peacefully, but my plans have gone to shit." Frustrated, he thinks, "It seems like the family's status and authority aren't what they used to be. I have to start gathering information on our overall situation." He puts on his clothes and heads outside, thinking to himself, "People might get suspicious of me if I start poking around the house, and that won't do. I'll have to get information from someone else." Suddenly, he gets an idea. The Dark Merchants, they're the underground group known as the Information Traders of the Dark. There are only a handful of information-gathering groups that are known, but there are limitations to their capabilities as they operate under the justification of working for orthodox sections. On the other hand, the Dark Merchants have no such limitations. In short, as long as you have enough money, the Dark Merchants can get you the Emperor's darkest secrets. I should be able to get the information I want from them. In the next scene, a soldier approaches the sword tiger, who was training earlier. The soldier says, "They said that the bum drank a lot of alcohol and then got totally wasted." The sword tiger, curious, asks, "Who was that?" The soldier replies, "Who else? The only one in the Nangum family who has started exercising as well. That cripple who wasn't even able to hold his chopsticks, not to mention a sword. He's doing all sorts of weird stuff." The sword tiger, irritated, slams a book down and asks, "What is it that you want to say?" The soldier, with frustration, replies, "If we had the elixirs that he had all this while, we would probably be among the top 10 martial masters. I hate that he's receiving special treatment just because he's the family head's son. It sickens me to see him doing all those stupid things just because he's a little healthier now." The sword tiger, dismissive, responds, "He's not an opponent worthy of my attention. Be prudent and don't cause any commotion." The soldier, unable to contain his curiosity, insists, "I can't stop thinking about it. I need to go see what condition he's in with my own eyes." The sword tiger reluctantly agrees, "Just observe him. Don't do anything stupid." In the following scene, Henry falls to the ground after being tripped by a soldier who intentionally walks away without apologizing. Furious, Henry demands, "If you walked into me, you should apologize. Why did you just walk away?" The soldier turns, sneering, "What if I don't want to apologize?" With a determined expression, Henry responds, "I can't stand guys who have no manners. It's not too late yet. Apologize to me and walk away." The soldier gets in Henry's face and threatens, "Looks like you have a death wish." Henry, unflinching, replies, "If you continue acting like this, you'll be bleeding from your ass." His conviction is evident in his strong stance. The soldier, ready to strike, swings at Henry, but before he can even land a punch, he's knocked down within an instant. Confused and disoriented, the soldier touches his cheek, only to be met with another slap from the opposite side. Henry unleashes a barrage of punches, leaving the soldier reeling on the ground, begging for mercy. "Please, stop it," the soldier cries out. Henry, cracking his knuckles, says, "Guys who are rude need to take a beating before they learn manners." He turns to leave but warns the soldier, "Be careful moving forward." However, the soldier, refusing to give up, gets up and screams, "You useless bastard." He draws a small sword and shouts, "I'm going to kill you." Henry, noticing the threat, delivers a powerful kick to the soldier's stomach, sending him crashing into a wall with such force that it creates a hole. The soldier falls to the ground, writhing in pain. Henry, with a cold expression, remarks, "A so-called Orthodox family. It's not my first time seeing something like this. I guess when it comes down to betrayals and backstabbing, both the Orthodox and evil sects are the same." His mind drifts to his past as he considers the similarities. He then approaches the unconscious soldier, kneeling down beside him. "You should choose your opponent wisely. Why are you asking for trouble by doing unnecessary things?" Henry tries to rouse the soldier, but he remains unconscious. Leaning in even closer, Henry asks ominously, "Who are you?" In the next scene, the city is alive with beautiful houses and a bustling market, where a kid buys a snack, only for it to be snatched away by Henry, as if nothing had happened. Henry ponders where to find the dark merchants, recalling that they used to lurk at the street corners, but he can't spot them anywhere. His gaze falls on a building that piques his interest. Upon noticing a strange mark on the door, he smirks to himself, thinking, "Bingo! Looks like they are still the same, even after all this time." Inside the building, one of the dark merchants laments the lack of earnings this month. Henry strides in and casually asks if the merchant is a dark merchant, adding that they should seriously consider decorating the place. It's no different from those working out in the open. The merchant demands to know who Henry is and how he found them. Henry then heads to a door on the left side, confidently declaring, "I think it's around here." He pushes a hidden block, and suddenly, a concealed door opens right next to the locking mechanism. The dark merchant is left in utter shock, unable to comprehend how Henry discovered the secret pathway to the hidden world where top-grade products are kept so swiftly. Henry gestures toward the door and suggests it would be better to talk inside. The merchant warns him to stay away from the pathway, insisting it's not a place for just anyone, while drawing his sword. Henry points to himself and asks, "Do I look like just anyone?" The merchant answers no, but Henry replies, "Well, that's good." A twisted smile forms on his face, but the dark merchant, furious, charges at him, declaring, "I see you as a corpse on the ground, you bastard." In a matter of seconds, Henry has beaten the merchant to a pulp, his anger palpable as he asks, "You guys always choose the hard way out, huh?" The battered merchant, his face swollen and bruised, mutters an apology. Henry then interrogates him, noticing the stolen goods around, and the merchant denies any wrongdoing, insisting he acquired them legitimately. "But my lord," the merchant adds, "what are you here for?" Henry responds, "Relax, I have no interest in your stolen goods. What I need is information." He demands to know everything that has transpired over the last 70 years, including the bloody demonic wars and the actions of the demonic spawns. After a while, Henry exits the Merchants Association, a blank expression on his face as he contemplates the unbelievable revelations. Who was the one who ended the demonic war? He wonders aloud, recalling a previous conversation he had. The merchant answers, "It was the great warrior, martial god Qian." Henry questions, "Wasn't it the Supreme One himself in a past life?" The merchant shakes his head and elaborates on the demonic war, explaining how the Orthodox Heavenly Alliance fought for their fate against the demonic faction. The Orthodox emerged victorious after a battle lasting around a month, all thanks to the great warrior Qian. Henry interjects, "It wasn't a month, it was just 7 days." "But go on." The merchant continues, recounting that although the demonic faction was defeated, their leader was a true monster, on par with the Spear King and Fist King, who were as powerful as Martial God, one of the 10 great martial arts masters, and fought without weapons. Henry retorts, "That's not true. Those bastards were the ones who backstabbed me." He inquires about the name of the demonic faction, learning that the demonic monarch is one of the 4 great demons, but the 10 great martial arts masters managed to behead him. "What is the name of this heavenly demon guy?" Henry asks. The merchant replies, "The heavenly demon, Hao Yun." Henry is incredulous, lamenting the ridiculous fabrications that have been spun. He reflects on how the 9 great sects and 5 great families conspired to betray him, making Qian the hero while branding him as part of the demonic faction. They twisted the narrative surrounding the Fist King and Spear King, erasing him from the story and diminishing the almighty demonic monarch to a mere small fry. Why manipulate history? Henry struggles to grasp the entire situation, holding his head in frustration, exclaiming, What a headache this is giving me. He shakes it off, deciding to focus on more pressing matters. He learns that the first family is the weakest, to which the merchant confirms, explaining that the 5 great families have become more powerful than the 9 great sects over time. Among them, the Nangon family is the weakest in martial arts, ability, and finances. Henry recalls that the Nangon family was once of the highest standing when the Sword King was alive. The merchant explains that since the Sword King's death, the family's prestige has plummeted over the past 10 years, compounded by their financial strain due to their second son suffering from a severe illness. Despite the saying that it takes 3 generations for a wealthy family to go bankrupt, the Nangon family is on the brink of decline, though they still wield significant influence. Henry, frustrated by the turn of events, reflects, I thought I hit the jackpot with this family, but I was wrong. Just how far are those gods going to go with their pranks? He arrives home, where Alice greets him, asking, My lord, where have you been? He replies, I have a lot on my mind and I'm sensitive right now. Please leave me alone if possible. Alice, however, insists, the family head is calling for you. You need to go right now. Puzzled, Henry asks, again? In the next scene, the family head and his first son Ron, along with the elder and his first son, the Sword King, stand waiting for Henry. Recognizing the person beside the family head, Henry thinks, my older brother, Ron. But who are those frowning dudes next to him? The family head begins, I've called you because I have a question for you. Henry asks, what is it? The elder interjects, did you beat up my son, Sean? A puzzled expression crosses Henry's face. Sean? Who was that? The elder grows angrier, demanding, why aren't you answering? The family head urges, please don't be harsh. Let's hear what Henry has to say. The elder retorts, family head, it's because you always cover up for him. That's why he lives so recklessly. Henry suddenly recalls the person he had beaten earlier. So he's that guy's son? He realizes, processing that the family head must be referring to his cousin. A smile starts to creep onto his face, which the elder quickly notices. Why are you smiling? He snaps. He gestures toward the beaten Sean, whose bruised and banished state prompts the elder to say, let's see if you can still smile after seeing the state he's in. Henry thinks, that's not too serious, though. At least he's alive. The elder turns to Sean, saying, Henry is the one who did this to you. Sean responds affirmatively. Did you hear that? There's no need for further discussion. The family head presses, did you really break Sean's arms and legs? With an innocent look, Henry replies, I did not. The elder, visibly furious, shouts, how shameless of you. How dare you lie in front of your parents? Henry feigns innocence again, declaring, Father, I swear I didn't lay a single finger on my cousin. Hearing this, the family head turns to the elder, saying, I don't think Henry is lying, he's even swearing he didn't do it. Perhaps Sean got injured while training. The elder, incensed, shouts, family head. Are you saying my son is lying? The family head counters, that's not what I mean. Think logically, he has a body weaker than a normal person. How could he beat Sean, who was a martial artist? The elder argues, I heard his condition has improved, he's even practicing martial arts. The family head responds, it has only been a month since he woke up from the brink of death. He's barely holding up. Even if he learns martial arts, he won't stand a chance against your son. The elder asks Sean, did you make up the story? Sean shakes his head. The Sword King steps in, saying, I believe my brother's words. He may still be a little immature and do what he wants, but he's not someone who would lie. Ron, the first son, echoes this sentiment, stating he trusts his brother. As tensions rise, both sides glare at each other, with Henry caught in the middle. He thinks to himself, this situation has gotten interesting. I wonder who would win if they fought. But the elder suddenly screams for them to stand down, asserting their presence in front of the family head. The Sword King apologizes for his emotional outburst, and the family head reassures him, it's all right, you are a hot-blooded young man. The Sword King expresses gratitude for the family head's understanding, while Ron also apologizes for the commotion. Henry curses the situation, thinking that this old geezer has ruined his fun by intervening just before a potential fight. The elder then glares at Henry, accusing him, aren't you the cause of all this commotion? He shouts, I'll ask you one last time, did you really hurt my son? Henry, with a sinister grin, retorts, do you really want to know the truth? The elder's eyes narrow, yes, tell me the truth. Just as Henry begins to explain, he suddenly starts coughing up blood. Concern fills the room as everyone rushes toward him. Alice tries to support him, saying, just as we thought you were getting better, your illness has flared up again. Henry points toward the sky, exclaiming, do you see that? Alice responds, see what? He points at a blood-red rainbow formed from his blood. This is not the time to be admiring that, the family head commands, pointing at Henry. Bring him back to his room and contact the doctor. Alice agrees and helps him away. As they walk, everyone watches, puzzled by the unfolding events. Suddenly, Henry coughs up blood again, leaving everyone in shock and confusion about what to do. Alice urges him to stop. The family head, fuming, asks the elder, did you see everything? The elder and the Sword King are left speechless. The elder finally mutters, family head, my son Sean isn't feeling well either. Let's discuss this matter next time. Sean insists, I'm okay, but the elder shouts, no, you must be in pain. Frustrated, the elder takes his family and leaves. Later, Sean, tears streaming down his face, cries, Father, I'm so infuriated. The elder places a comforting hand on his shoulder, saying, hold it in. The day for revenge is not far off. In the next scene, Alice is still carrying Henry as they distance themselves. Suddenly, Henry stands up as if nothing had happened, pushing Alice away and declaring, I'm fine now. Get lost. Alice is shocked, asking, you weren't sick? Henry replies, I'm okay. I just put on a little act. Alice, relieved yet bewildered, questions, why did you do that? Henry responds, it's too troublesome to come up with an excuse. Well, thanks to me, the situation has been resolved. Alice pats him on the face, saying, the Lord's personality is getting weirder and weirder. Could it be due to the high fever you had a month ago? Henry, now irritated, shouts, stop with your nonsense. Go bring me a decent sword now. Meanwhile, the family head inquires about Henry's condition, and Ron reassures him that he seems to be fine. The family head remarks, even though he coughed up so much blood? Ron explains, based on what Alice said, he was just putting on act. The family head is taken aback. What does that mean? Did Henry really beat up Sean? Ron replies, it's hard to tell. The family head continues, it won't be easy for him to win against Sean, who was trained in martial arts for such a short time and has that body. If what he says is true, then Henry is an unprecedented genius. Ron adds, I hope what he said was the truth. The family head concurs, I feel the same way. The next day, Henry has moved to a secluded area to train, ensuring he won't be seen by anyone. In the woods, he muses, if I use these protective bandages, my wrists should hold out. They should be good enough. He pulls out his sword, noting its weight. If I hadn't bandaged my wrists, I wouldn't have lasted long, he thinks, recognizing that he wouldn't be able to face even one of them in his current state. I shouldn't get cocky just because I beat some thugs. The martial arts tests of the Nangon family are nothing to sneeze at. I need to handle what's in front of me first. With determination, he swings his sword in multiple directions, getting accustomed to its size and weight. As he practices martial arts moves, leaves swirl around him, and he starts cutting through them with precise swings. The only way forward is through training. I need to get back to at least 30% of my original strength. Henry began practicing diligently in the forest, swinging his sword with intense focus. He called upon the heavenly darking techniques, feeling his energy increase twofold. It was worth training to the point where I felt like dying, he thought as he swung his sword, watching 3 trees fall with a single strike. Inspecting his weapon, he wondered, is this all I can do? I still have a long way to go. Is it because I'm using a weapon that my body isn't familiar with? I need to develop a martial art that suits this body. With a cold expression, he resolved, let's try out the 13 flashing thunderballs I saw in the books earlier. He aimed to simplify and speed up the technique, gathering all his dispersed power into a single strike while reducing unnecessary movements. After concentrating, he unleashed a burst of electricity against a tree. Smoke filled the air, and as he coughed, he muttered, now this is more like it. Looking at his sword, brimming with lightning, he realized, now that I streamlined the technique to 3 moves, I can no longer call it the 13 flashing thunderballs. Instead, I'll name it the triple lightning sword technique. He knew it would take about a month to master the technique and mused, should I train longer? Why do I, the supreme lord of the world, need to concern myself with this? It truly hurts my pride to engage in such trivialities. Meanwhile, at the palace, Alice approached her father, who was engrossed in the accounts. Father, did you call for me? She asked. He looked up, saying, hold on, I've calculated everything. Alice inquired, are you done with your work? Her father sighed, trying to manage with insufficient funds is a real pain. I've handled our immediate problems, but I have no idea how to do it again next month. Concerned, Alice asked, is our situation dire right now? He assured her, I'll take care of the family matters. You don't have to worry about it. Let's have a cup of tea. Continuing, he said, the reason I called you is because of Lord Henry. I've heard he's changed completely compared to the past. What do you think? You should be able to tell since you serve him closely. Alice replied, he seems like a different person now, both in mind and body. Her father asked, has his body really gotten better? Alice confirmed, yes, his body has improved a lot, but he still overexerts himself at times. Her father expressed relief, saying, I'm glad the rumors are true. Has he been consuming elixirs as well? With a serious tone, Alice clarified, it's not just that he's been consuming them like crazy. It's as if he's a ghost who couldn't eat elixirs before he died. The accountant replied, is that so? Alice, still serious, added, is the reason you asked to see me related to those elixirs? You want to reduce those purchases as much as possible, right? Her father admitted, to be honest, I want to do that, but the family head is quite stubborn about his decisions, so it's impossible. Alice responded, so you want me to try to get him to cut down on the elixirs? He nodded appreciatively, I'd be thankful if you could do that. I'll try, Alice said, but I'm not sure if it will work. The accountant replied, I'll be counting on you. He explained, a martial clan focuses on martial arts, but to maintain and develop the clan, we need finances too. People like us need to help achieve financial stability. Alice acknowledged his words respectfully as she left, but her father called her back, smiling, "Aren't things hard for you?" She responded, "They are, but it's nothing I can't handle." That night, Henry tied the bandages on his injured wrists, reflecting, "I need to practice more to master the triple lightning sword technique, but my body can't handle it." He shouted, "Alice, are you there?" Venturing outside, he wondered where she had gone. Taking 2 elixirs right now would be perfect, he thought, but I can't help but consume so many after training. He recalled the dark merchants and how the financial state of the national family was in crisis due to the second sons squandering their wealth, making it hard to afford even 1 elixir. Determined not to push too hard, he decided to practice in the front yard instead. He drew his sword, attempting to release an intense attack but faltering and hitting the ground softly. Struggling to lift the sword, he lamented, "My body isn't in great shape today. It would be better to rest until Alice manages to get those elixirs." Compromising on his training, he turned to go inside, but a spy noticed him, thinking, incompetent training. However, Henry caught a glimpse of a rat, pondering, how strange. Why is this family keeping tabs on me? Did the family head order them to do this? He surmised, I'm sure the family had asked them to watch me, he's overly obsessed with his son. In the next scene, the elder inquired of the spy, is he really practicing martial arts? The spy confirmed, yes, but his martial arts are unimpressive. He's quite clumsy. The elder responded, for someone with 9 meridian blockages, there's only so much he can do. Despite the spy's report, the elder acknowledged that Henry appeared healthier than expected but insisted there was no need for concern. Did Sean lose because he was careless? To think he'd lose against a fool like Henry, if only he were half as good as his older brother, the spy noted. Should I continue keeping tabs on Henry? The elder replied, there's no need to keep watching him now that we know enough. We need to focus on the more important tasks at hand. The spy inquired, are we going to make our move? Isn't it still too early? The elder confidently responded, I believe this is the perfect time to act. It's time to reap what we have sown. The next day in the forest, a massive blast erupted in the center, sending golden flashes across the landscape. Trees were felled by the force, and Henry stood amidst the chaos, sword in hand, practicing. After a grueling session, he coughed up blood, exclaiming, damn it. My body reacts the moment I overexert myself. This is bad. It seems I still have a long way to go. What a weak body. Frustrated, he thought, it's no fun practicing against trees that can't fight back. Cutting something is only satisfying if it bleeds or screams. As he mused about better times ahead, he decided it was time to head back to the palace. Upon entering, he was greeted by Alice. I finally found you. Where have you been? I was looking for you everywhere, she exclaimed. With irritation, Henry replied, bring me the elixirs. There's no time for this. Alice's expression shifted to one of urgency. Something terrible has happened. Henry, unfazed, asked, what is it this time? Alice continued, Elder Mark has called a meeting, and there are rumors that the family head might lose his position. Henry shrugged, is that so? But what does that have to do with me? Alice was taken aback by his nonchalance. You shouldn't act as if this doesn't concern you. The family head is your father, she insisted. His situation is all because of you. He spent a lot of the family's wealth to buy those elixirs for you. If he's forced to step down, you won't be able to consume the elixirs you crave. Suddenly, realization hit Henry. That won't do, he said, his demeanor shifting. I need to make sure that doesn't happen. He bolted toward the elders' meeting. Inside, the elders were seated at a long table, facing the family head. One elder demanded, how can you neglect your responsibilities as the family head? You can no longer squander the family's wealth. Do you know how much you spent on Henry's treatment? More than 10 million gold. The family head responded, but this was all to help Henry. Another elder cut in, stop being so stubborn. If you don't give up on him, you might lose your position. In defiance, the family head declared, in that case, I'll give up being the family head. The room fell silent in shock. He continued, how can I care for a family with over 2,000 members when I can't even take care of my own son? An elder shouted, are you serious? How could you say that? The family head replied, if I can save my son, I'll gladly give up my position. But I hope you'll allow Mason to continue receiving treatment. Elder Mark sneered, that's cowardly. Just because you're stepping down doesn't mean you're absolved of responsibility. What you're doing is simply running away. The family head countered, what do you want me to do? The elder insisted, we must investigate your actions and the corruption that's been happening for the past 20 years. Even if we have to involve law enforcement. Other elders protested, claiming it was too extreme to doubt the family head after his years of dedication. Elder Mark retorted, you may think I'm cold-blooded, but I disagree. The family head has indeed squandered wealth for treatment, but it's not just for Henry. Another elder asked, do you have proof that he didn't use funds for personal gain? Elder Mark replied, yes, I do. That frail child, sick with 9 meridian blockages, is currently training in martial arts and drinking alcohol. Does that make sense? Are we using family funds on him when he's clearly fine? Elder Mark turned to the family head, asking, you really used the money for Henry's treatment, right? The family head confirmed, yes. Suddenly, the doors of the meeting hall swung open, drawing the attention of the elders. It was Henry, stepping boldly into the space. "What's the problem?" he asked, a challenging tone in his voice. The family head frowned. "What are you doing here?" "This is a gathering of the family elders." "You shouldn't be here, leave at once." But Elder Mark interjected. "No, this is good. The one at the center of the problems is here, let's hear what he has to say." Henry smirked. "Thank you for giving me the chance to speak. I'm so touched, I might just cry." Elder Mark pressed, "I'll ask you bluntly, are you cured of your blockages?" With surprising determination, Henry replied, "I'm not fully cured, but I'm feeling much better now. If I keep taking elixirs, I'll recover even more. I'm also working hard to practice martial arts." The elders began murmuring among themselves, astonished. Henry is really learning martial arts? This is shocking. Elder Mark continued, "I'm glad you're feeling better, but with all the elixirs you've consumed, you could have created a squad of elite martial artists for the family. Why not let the family use the elixirs since you've had so many?" Henry shook his head. "No can do." Mark looked surprised. "What do you mean?" Henry replied confidently, "No matter how many elixirs they consume, it won't go far. It's a waste." "But I'm different." Elder Mark frowned. "It seems your training has gone to your head." Henry interrupted, "Are you serious?" "Of course, I can prove that those elixirs aren't wasted on me." Mark raised an eyebrow. "Who do you want as an opponent? Someone from the family bloodline?" Before Mark could finish, Henry declared, "Your son. He looked pretty strong last time I met him." Elder Mark was taken aback but secretly delighted, thinking, "This is great." Henry noticed Mark's smile. "Why are you laughing? Are you scared? I guess you have some backbone being part of the martial clan. I'll accept your proposal." The family head interjected, "Please stop." "How can you?" "I've already said I'll take responsibility for everything," Mark interrupted. "This isn't a place for empty words," another elder chimed in. "Everything said here carries weight." Another elder remarked, "Is it normal for the son of a martial clan to be involved in duels? It's not wrong. While he might not be a match, he should still face his opponent." The family head looked shocked. "You all are going too far. You know his condition." Mark replied, "I've decided that my son and Henry will duel." The family head protested, "No." Mark countered, "This is how it must be. Prepare yourself, both of you." As the scene shifted, the family head was left anxious. "Gods of heaven and earth, why have you given us this trial?" He turned to Henry, "Do you understand what you just did?" Henry replied casually, "Of course. I suggested a way for us to solve our current problem." The family head groaned, clutching his head, thinking, his condition has improved, but he seems to have become foolish. Meanwhile, a conversation unfolded between the family head and Ron, the first son. "This is not just an individual matter, it's about life and death. I don't know how it will go, so you must take care." Ron assured him, "I'll step in if it looks like Henry will get hurt." The family head replied, "That probably won't happen, but we can't let our guard down." The scene shifted to the arena the next day, where all the elders and family members gathered to witness the duel between Henry and Ron. The swordmaster, Ron, declared, "I'll let you have the first strike. Give it your best shot." Henry, with a sly smile, thought, "Brother, you're the one I'm really after. I hope to fight you next someday." Before anyone could react, the duel commenced. In an instant, Henry struck, and Ron collapsed, holding his wrist. "My head hurts," he exclaimed, shocked. The crowd gasped, unable to comprehend what had just happened. It was as if no one had seen the move Henry made. Even the elders were bewildered, thinking, what martial art did he use? It looked like he simply punched him, but how did he do it so quickly? Henry muttered to himself, "Why is it so hard to fix my wrist today?" The swordmaster struggled to rise, furious. "How dare you ambush me before the signal to start was given?" Henry shrugged. "What nonsense is that? The moment you raised your sword against me, that was the start." Elder Mark shouted, "Did everyone hear that?" Henry launched a cowardly sneak attack. He resorted to dirty tricks in an arena meant for fairness. But another elder defended Henry, saying, even if he took Ron down in a single strike, it speaks to his skill. Mark was taken aback, thinking, these old geezers are singing a different tune now. Elder Mark admonished, "John, didn't I tell you to take him seriously? Don't let your guard down." John, Ron's brother, responded, "I'm sorry. I was too careless." The family members whispered among themselves, "It's impossible for the swordmaster to go down like that. He must be playing a prank." John encouraged Ron, "Go all out. Win this battle." The swordmaster readied himself, declaring, "I'll give it everything I've got." He unleashed his solitary spirit sword, glowing with white lightning, preparing to attack. But before he could unsheath it, Henry lunged forward, gripping John's wrist, preventing him from drawing the sword. John was left utterly shocked.
A quick note to my viewers. First off, I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to everyone who has been enjoying my videos. Your support means the world to me. However, I've noticed that while my videos are reaching thousands of views, my subscriber count remains quite low, often under 3%. If you've enjoyed what you've seen so far, I kindly ask you to consider subscribing to the channel. Your subscription not only helps me grow, but also motivates me to create even more content for you. Thank you for being a part of this journey with me.